and here's the way I look at it. This, as advertised, is Meet the Candidates Night, okay? This is not the great Newton debates of 2020, okay? If you want to watch a debate, you need to go home. In about an hour on MSNBC, you can watch a debate. This is not a debate. So what that means is, as a candidate, you're going to have the opportunity to come up here and introduce yourself, okay? Then we're going to take questions from the audience, okay? Now, I realize there might be a few people out there that have some questions. They really want to get somebody with those questions. I would highly encourage you to ask questions that are not so much personalized, but are specific to the role, because all the candidates are going to be up there at the same time. They're all going to answer the same question. So we're going to go right down the row, okay? And just so you know, we'll rotate the question so you're not always at the end, so you don't have an extra 15 minutes to think of your answer. So we'll rotate that. But again, it's Meet the Candidates Night. It's not a debate, so we want to keep it clean, as they say in the boxing world, right? So, as I said, we'll try to get it through as quickly as possible. We have some school candidates and the town candidates. We've mixed them up a little bit through a total random process. I think we spent 3 hours with one of those lottery things and we pulled names. So, something like that. But I also have a public service announcement before we start this. This is the time of year of campaign signs, okay? Here's the rule with campaign signs. You can only put a campaign sign on a piece of property where the owner has given you permission to put the campaign sign. What that means is, residential, you knock on the door, you call somebody up, they say you can put up a campaign sign, that's great. You can do that. Public property, so islands, and I realize, Mike, I think we actually have some privately owned medians, yeah. But most of the medians are public property. You cannot put campaign signs on public property. If you have them out there, go get them. Tonight would be great. Right. Bob has seen it in action. Make sure you have the right person. I made that mistake. I put it on the wrong person's property. Person kept taking it down. I'd drive by, I'd put it back up. Eventually they found me. So make sure you have the right house. Make sure it's not public property, because we don't want it to be the Wild West, because what happens is, and we're kind of past this now with the primaries over, but what happens is you have kids with national campaigns like Congress or Senate. They drive up to these meetings and they see, oh, I see selectmen signs, I'll just start putting up, Senator, Congress signs, and now we have a mess. So that's the public service announcement. So without any further ado, since we're talking about roads, we're going to start with the road agent. So I'd like to get our two candidates for road agent to come on up, have a seat. And as they come up, I'll introduce them. So we have Mike Pavero, who's the incumbent road agent, and Frank Gibbs. They're both running. We need microphones. Diane's going to do that. So typically what we like to do is we give everybody 2 minutes to introduce themselves before we take questions. We usually start with the challenger, so Mr. Gibbs, if you want to take a couple minutes. And I'll also state this, if you go beyond the 2 minutes, you're going to see me start to walk towards you. That's the signal that, it's kind of like at the Oscars, they start playing the music when you go too long. We don't have a band, so go ahead, Frank.
Good evening. Name's Frank Gibbs. I've been in this town for almost 65 years. I've lived in Newton all my life. I'm a business owner in town. I do have elected experience. I was road agent for 9 years, a planning board member for almost 9 years, and currently on the ZBA for the past couple years. I'm running for road agent because with my past experience and my expertise, I can do a great job. If elected, I plan on attending planning board meetings to assist with road projects at no expense to the town. My first priority will be to fix the potholes. In my opinion, the roads are in tough shape. I have been riding through town for the last few weeks, and I haven't seen the road crew out fixing any of the potholes. I plan on doing general maintenance to our roads, which has been neglected the last few years. I will review what has been done in the last few years and will then prioritize what needs to be done to improve our roads. Thank you.
Okay, Mike?
Good evening, folks. My name's Mike Pavero. I am the current and prior road agent for the past 12 years. I live at 6 Maple Ave, Newton, New Hampshire. I have fortunately raised my family in a great community, 3 daughters and now 3 grandchildren going through the school system and living here in the community. I served 8 years combined in the United States Marine Corps, so I have military experience. I've gone to school, graduated grade 12, and went to Wentworth and Northeastern University for construction, engineering, and management. My experience as a contractor, I have 35 years of construction experience. I've run crews up as many as 65 guys. I have run construction projects north of $30 million. We've done everything from treatment plants to roads, bridges, highways, seawalls, underwater concrete. Pretty much anything in the heavy civil division we've done and worked on. My time here in Newton, the past 12 years, everything is predicated, doesn't matter what department you're on here in town. It's a budget. You know, you'd like to fix things faster. You'd like to fix more things in the course of a year, but it's all budget driven. So you do as much as you can with the funds that you have. The past 12 years, I've done almost 32,000 square feet, linear feet of road. The first year I became road agent, I had to put 75 ton of coal patch in potholes. 75 ton of coal patch is a lot of coal patch, folks. And that was the year I took over. Since then, the road crews are out there every day. The 2 guys that we have on the highway department, and it's only a 2-man crew, 1 full-time, 1 part-time. Again, it's all budget-driven. They do a great job. You know, we're limited here. And I will tell you something over the past 12 years as being a road agent. It's not just a highway position. These small communities, Newton, the abutting communities, you fill a role as a department head here, police, fire, road agent. You have to work together. You work with the surrounding towns. It's all mutual aid. So my relationship with the abutting towns and the state is a great relationship. We're all mutual aid. We call each other. We do what we need to do to help out and pitch in. Listen, pretty simple for me. I've been doing this for 12 years. You like me, you vote me in. You don't like me, you send me home. That's it for me.
Thank you, guys. So do we have any questions for the candidates for road agent? Anything about mailboxes or anything like that? Nothing like that? What's that? He did, yeah.
I did.
And he probably knows who did it.
I think I do.
So just so you guys don't go away empty-handed, I think both of you mentioned the budget. So what, going forward, as we know the budgets are small, what are some things you would do to be able to make the budget as it is get stretched further? Frank, any?
How do you stretch it further?
Yeah, how would you make efficient use of the budget the voters give you?
Just do the best job we can out there with the equipment, basically.
Good. Mike?
The budget isn't a case of stretching the budget. we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. If we have a mild winter, which we're having right now, then you will have more funds available to do infrastructure improvement in the summer. If you have a hard winter, which we've gone through, 3 or 4 years ago, we had record snowfall, set the records in New Hampshire. That doesn't leave you a lot of money in the spring or summer to do any work with. So it's really a case of you gotta get the bat and play what's thrown at you. And so,
Great. Any questions, anyone?
come on, somebody's gotta
Letting
have
these
something.
guys off easy. Annie? So if you do have a question, do exactly what Annie's doing. We need you on the microphone because we're live on TV, right? Millions of people.
Yeah.
This is like, I probably shouldn't have told you
Oh,
that.
nervous, Matt.
I know, exactly. This is like Super Bowl crowds, but we're gonna tape this and put it on the web so people who couldn't watch it live or come here. So we need to make sure we get your questions on the microphone.
Okay. Hi. I wanted to ask a question about equipment. Matt just referred to equipment. I think, Frank, you referred to equipment. My understanding in the past, when Frank was a road agent, that he did not have his own equipment. Mike has equipment. I wonder what has changed, if anything, and how you would handle equipment if you don't have your own. Thank you.
Who do you want to take a stab at that first? I don't care.
Maybe you,
I'll go. I can't speak for Frank and what he has for equipment. I own everything from 125-ton cranes right down to a shovel and everything in between. I have about 65 pieces of equipment between off-road equipment, excavators, and site trucks. I have had no issues at all since in the 12 years that I've been road agent, not being able to service the town with the equipment I own.
Frank, any response?
For the equipment, I've done all the work on the roads myself for excavating and like that. And for the hot topping, we had hot top companies come in and do the hot topping of the roads. But replacing culverts and all of that, I did that all with my equipment. Plowing in the winter, we hired that out. We hired pickup trucks and small trucks to do that for the plowing in the winter so I can give some of the money back to the town people. But I do have enough trucks to cover for the plowing if I couldn't hire trucks for that.
All right, well, gentlemen, thank you, and good luck, and we'll move on to our next.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to do the Newton Planning Board next. So this is for there are two, I believe I have this correct, right? There are 2 3-year terms open on the ballot this year. So it's a pick 2 from 3. We have 2 of the candidates here. So we have Annie Collier and we have Edvin Kronalik, right? You got that right? Awesome. So Barbara White is also a candidate. She couldn't be here tonight, but I have a prepared statement I'll read after these guys go. But ladies first, Annie, did you want to do your 2-minute intro?
Okay, you probably can tell which one of us is Annie and which is Edvin, right?
Just guys, make sure if you
Do I
just,
put this on?
yep, just clip it wherever.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Annie Collier. I want to help with responsible development, both residential and commercial in our town. I want to see our tax base grow where possible. Our town has a need to grow its valuation to reduce the individual tax burden. I see both the cost of the schools at $23,500 per child and also the needs to educate our kids. I see the forced, stagnant spending for our town due to the high taxes. We need some low-impact balance in our tax base. I feel that one of the biggest possibilities that we have is Puzzle Lane. The potential increase in tax revenue is to cover over 9% of the town budget and 14% of the school budget if it gets built out as has been planned. The developer needs to follow the stipulations on his permits completely and needs to be treated fairly, the same as other developers. I don't think that's happening, and it hurts our tax income. I've reviewed our zoning regulations and forms as well as those of other nearby towns. I think there are some changes the planning board is long overdue in proposing as reasonable amendments. In addition, the master plan is long overdue for updating. I commit to getting those done. I'm a centrist who will work to extinguish dysfunction and get things done. We need both to retain our distinct and valuable rural character and also to expand our tax base with responsible and lawful voter-approved development. Please give me your support and the opportunity to serve you on the planning board. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank you all for coming here to Town Hall and everybody watching on TV. Elections, even as small as ours, are so important to our community and to making our community better. I just wanted to say a little bit about myself. My name is Edvin Kronalik. I came here to the United States in 1998, spent most of my life in Saugus, Massachusetts. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice as well as a graduate from Massachusetts Police Academy. I'm a special state police officer with the Massachusetts Port Authority Aviation Unit, and I'm also a probationary firefighter here in Newton, New Hampshire. I've been here for a year, moved here with my wife, and we now have a 1-year-old son, and I love this community already. I'm currently on the board working for Greenie Park, and we want to renovate Greenie Park, and we want to see this town grow and prosper, with also keeping that small town feel that we loved when we moved here. That brings me to why I'm on the planning board. I think that the current board, who have done a great job in these past years, is at a crossroads with our planning and development. If elected, I will work with the community and the businesses to keep the small town feel that we all know and love, but also work with the developers and the rest of the community to move forward and to bring more opportunity to reduce our taxes, improve our community, and keep all of us here loving this town of Newton more and more. Thank you.
Great.
Great. So the third candidate, as I mentioned, is Barbara White. She couldn't be with us, so her letter to you all is, I am sorry I am not able to attend this candidates' night in person. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My husband and I have lived in Newton since 1999 and very much enjoy living here. I became interested in serving on the planning board after being secretary for a planning board in a neighboring town. It piqued my interest to serve on the planning board in the town where I live. I would learn more about my town and might be an asset by being on the board. I have served on the planning board in Newton since 2008. I bring a fair and equitable opinion on applications brought before the board, and it is the charge of the board members to make sure applicants are complying with the ordinances and regulations. No one member makes a decision alone. It is a combined decision. One of the main focuses of a planning board is the establishment of a master plan. The vision and land use sections are the two elements required to support the zoning ordinances. These chapters in Newton's master plan are currently in the process of being updated. Another focus of the planning board is regulatory functions, which includes the drafting, reviewing, and recommending ordinances, regulations, and amendments. Under these regulatory functions are subdivision and site plan review regulations. Subdivision regulations guide municipal development, protect prospective residents and abutting property owners from problems associated with poorly designed areas, and advance the purposes of the municipality's police power to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare. Site plans for non-residential and multifamily housing development are also regulated. It is the way to ensure uses permitted by the zoning ordinances are constructed in such a way that they fit into the area in which they are being constructed without causing drainage, traffic, lighting, or similar problems. There are procedures for submission of site plans and subdivision of land. All applicants are asked to provide the same information depending on the type of application they submit. No one application is treated any differently than the next. All are treated fairly and equitably. I ask for your vote on March 10th. Thank you, Barbara White. All right, so that leaves us with a couple of folks for questions. So does anybody have any questions for Planning Board? Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Jamie Fitzpatrick of Newton. I'd be interested in finding out from each of you what you would define as your first successful year. So you served a year, you get elected, you had 1 year on the board. What have you achieved in your first successful year? What is your priority? Thank you.
I'll go.
The next one.
I've set in my mind the goal of working with the fellow members to look at all of our zoning regulations and to see whether there are some changes that would make sense. This hasn't been done in a number of years, and I think it really needs to, particularly our light industrial commercial. We currently have a warrant before us for changing it to 50. I think, as I've told the developer, I think it's a little too much. But I do think that there are some modifications that could be made that could make things reasonable. For instance, 50-foot setbacks when next to commercial might be a good idea. The plan would be to have had, by the end of the first year, to have had public hearings, to hear from the public about what their thoughts are, to look at surrounding communities and see what would make sense, and to come up with a plan that hopefully would be unanimous from all the planning board members to recommend to the voters next March for voting. No changes in zoning happen. Number two would be to enforce and apply all zoning regulations that are in force at the time that I serve, equitably, fairly, completely, and with respect to listening to what abutters particularly have to say. And then the third thing would be the master plan, which Barbara White mentioned. That has been out of date since 2017. It's way past time. The planning board really needs to take action on some of these things that have been sitting there for a really long time. So my commitment is that action will be taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. My first goal is to look at, as she said last, is the action plan. The master plan, I apologize. We need to look at not just the industrial zones, we need to look at the commercial zones. We need to see what we can do for this town to mirror other towns. Towns that have businesses, have restaurants, small shops, things like that, that can help us expand, that can help people say, man, I want to come to Newton. You know, let's say, for example, we get a restaurant near the old fire station. Now, those people will come to town, go to that restaurant, use Estabrooks for gas, maybe they'll go on horse riding lessons across the street. We need to find a way to put Newton on the map. We're right on the border of Massachusetts. There's so many opportunity that we have, and that can all be included in the master plan. My second thing is to review the Puzzle Lane project, and no matter how, if it passes, Article 5 passes or not, we need to work with not just the developers, the abutters, and the whole community, because that Puzzle Lane can affect all of us and it could benefit all of us. I live off Goulds Hill Road, as many of you know, highway's right there. In Goulds Hill Road, everybody cuts through. I mean, everybody does, and I know that if more businesses added to Puzzle Lane, I know that people will cut through there, through in front of my house. But I also know if more businesses added to Puzzle Lane, it could help us in the future, it'd help our kids in the future by assisting our taxes and assisting our revenue to assist us, for example, with the fire department, to get a new truck, to get new equipment, to get new things. So my two goals are looking at everything as a whole, not just the industrial, looking at commercial, and looking at what could benefit all of us on every side of the revenue.
Good job.
Any other questions? Anyone? Charlie, are you coming for a question? All right.
If you're elected, either one of you, so you both can answer this question. If you're elected, how do you feel about when you do a subdivision about off-site improvements? Because this is a
Sorry?
big stinker for me.
Say it, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, how do you feel about off-site improvements? State statute allows you to require off-site improvements on certain subdivisions. How do you feel about that? Like, for instance, I shouldn't say this because I'm going to get myself in trouble, Chase Road. Now, I feel the developer put in 7 houses over there. The developer should have paid for part of that road to be redone, and he didn't. He wasn't required to. I want to know how you guys feel about that.
Right. First, Charlie, I just want to thank you for your service to the town and to the state. I truly appreciate it. I'm going to go off what Mike said in the last planning board meeting. I believe that we need to enforce some kind of bond towards every single builder and to be able to assist us with rebuilding the roads. If they damage the roads, it shouldn't be Mike going out there and his crew. It should be the builder who happened to damage the road, and I think that's what Mike was talking about at the last planning board meeting. So I fully support some kind of, if not a bond, to come up with something with the whole planning board that kind of puts the builders at, okay, well, we're going to do our best not to damage Newton's property and not to damage the road that Newton uses and that Newton pays for.
Okay, you practically took the words out of my mouth. No, I totally agree with that, and I think it's only fair that, I don't think it should come off of the taxpayers when the developer is doing a project, presumably as an investment to make money and he or she, since I've been one, should take care of making sure that the road is at least restored, perhaps improved if there's going to be increased traffic. It needs to be done, and I totally agree about bonds and not releasing them until and unless the work is inspected and done.
Well, just to let you both know, I feel that they should pay a percentage of the upgrade of a road like that.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for the planning board, folks? No? All right, let's thank them all.
I got to get this off.
All right, I'd like to move on to the Budget Committee, which I believe is Newton's representative on Budget Committee, right? It's not the at-large, right? Okay. So we have Corey Mason and Christine Kamitsky have joined us here tonight, so I believe this is an open position because Jim Doggett has decided not to run again, so we thank Jim for his service in this position, but now we have the opportunity to hear from the new candidates. So why don't we go ladies first? Christine, did you want to give us your 2-minute intro?
Thank you.
It's the toughest part of the evening right there, putting the mic on.
Good evening. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Christine Kosmitsky, and I have been a resident of Newton for the past 5.5 years. I have a BS in Human Services Administration from Merrimack College. For 35 years, I was employed at a social service agency administering various programs and serving as the Human Resources Director. Additionally, I was employed part-time as a crisis worker for Elder Abuse of Massachusetts. Since moving to Newton, I have been involved in both town and neighborhood activities. I currently serve as the Vice Chair of the Recreation Commission. While serving in that capacity, I have been responsible for the planning and implementation of the annual senior summer trip, seniors holiday luncheon, and senior barbecue. This year, I introduced a holiday luncheon for the residents of Packer Meadows, as well as securing free movie passes earmarked for our youth for use during school vacation. Education has always been a priority, both in my personal life and how I see a successful community developing. I have 2 daughters. Kimberly is a senior global regulation compliance auditor with, I know it's a mouthful, with Boston Scientific, and Nicole is an inclusion specialist in the Lynn public school system. Additionally, my granddaughter Jillian is a cardiac nurse at Beverly Hospital in Beverly, Mass. I strongly believe in and energetically work for the education of our youth at every grade level so that they can realize their dreams for the future. A superior educational program can be put in place without overburdening the taxpayers. The key is always the sound educational theory behind the planning and sensible fiscal allocating during the budgeting process. Though education is and should be the town's top priority, we must consider the town's other fiscal needs, among which are the police and fire departments, highway departments, maintaining reliable administrative services, and so forth. As made clear at a recent town meeting regarding the town's warrant articles, which do need to be addressed periodically, handling those articles in a way that balances line item expenses with funding the education suggests the breadth of responsibility behind managing town finances. Please consider my candidacy for election to the School Budget Committee in the upcoming March 10th election. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Good evening to you. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Selectmen, Town Newton Cable Committee, fellow candidates, and community members for all you do for me, my family, and also the Sanborn Regional School District. My name is Corey Mason. I've lived here in Newton since 2013, about similar time as me. I'm a proud parent of 4 girls. Yes, that's why I've got no hair. 3 of them have actually attended Sanborn Regional School District, and 1 will be in the next few years. I'm fortunate to have been elected and endorsed by many of you as I served 2 terms as a Sanborn Regional School District school board member. I've personally been immersed in education, municipal government for over 21 years. I've contributed to communities and students nationwide as a senior network engineer, technology director, director of business development, and I've co-founded multiple education management companies. The 3 towns that make up Sanborn Regional School District are all facing increasing expenses in multiple areas, from insurance to law enforcement and even waste management if you talk to folks at our transfer station. SRSD faces similar challenges, further complicated by the declining enrollment, while working to ensure we are able to retain and recruit exceptional teachers and staff. I'm running for Budget Committee because I have a proven track record of helping school districts and communities nationwide align their departmental goals and budgets to the strategic plans that are adopted, like the definition of success that we have at our school district, which almost, by the way, in most cases always is different from campus to campus, from building to building to department to department. I know how to balance a sensible and responsible fiscal I know how to be balanced, sensible, and responsible fiscal oversight while ensuring we preserve the qualities that make SRSD an exceptional place to work and provide education to our communities. I appreciate your vote to continue honoring the students, staff, the parent guardians, and taxpayers of all 3 communities that make up the Sanborn Regional School District. Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys. So do we have any questions for the Budget Committee candidates?
No? Great.
No? I think we have one.
Sure.
Jamie Fitzpatrick from Newton, so I'll be a one-trick pony here. So let's assume that you're elected to the Budget Committee. What do you define as your success? You've had your first year, it's completed. What success have you achieved? What do you define as your success in your first year? Thank you.
When I was an IT director in a couple of school districts in neighboring states, all department heads had met regularly to ensure that each department official knew of critical events occurring, as well as the estimated costs and anticipated revenue. I'd like to, in the first year, go ahead and bring our budget processes together in a tri-town perspective, get Fremont involved, get Newton and Kingston involved to ensure long-term stability amongst all of our towns. I'd like to see that we have mutual involvement from the community members, understand these conversations that are occurring from town to town as our children are all come together in sports and activities. So I think if ultimately we sit in the polls and go ahead and see 2 ballots and there's 2 different, there's conversations occurring, ultimately if you vote one yes here and no there, who are you impacting financially? Because we obviously want to go back to town. Think of the poor fire, the fire station a couple years ago. We just narrowly missed because we were concerned about possibly something else in the school district budget. So if these conversations were more open and organic and thoughtful, town-wide, together with the officials, I think we'd have greater sustainability opportunities. I'd like to see that happen.
Christine?
Yes, as a member of the Newton-Kingston Taxpayers Association, I hope to continue setting their goals of keeping taxes down while improvements on the accomplishments and the standards of the students. They have done this overwhelmingly since their existence, and I hope to be a part of this continuing.
All right, any other questions for these folks? No? Oh, Annie's got one?
Like both of you to please explain your view of what is the role of a budget committee member.
Again, I'm very new at this. I just came into the process a month ago, but in my past work experience, to review the budget, see where changes can be made, what things can be cut, what things should be enhanced, and work with other members to accomplish this goal.
Well, first off, I recognize that the position of the Budget Committee is not the school board. As someone who served on the school board for a couple of terms, I knew the importance and recognized the importance of the Budget Committee being the fiduciary agents for the school board. That being said, I believe that the Budget Committee's responsibility is to go ahead and I'd like to see the Budget Committee actually take a stronger role in vetting out the plans and vetting out the processes for which the questions. When I was an IT director, I got grilled by the Budget Committee for everything I was purchasing because it had to align to an outcome for the students, because that was a student achievement goal, an outcome for campus improvement plans, because that was a campus goal. I would like to see the Budget Committee take a more proactive approach to aligning the goals, the budget asks to the goals, ultimately that being set by the school board and the superintendent. I'd like to see the Budget Committee also take a more proactive look 3 years ahead. Ultimately, with fund balances of a huge question and having money left over at the end of the year, I get greatly concerned as someone who was a school board member, not overly new to the process, returning money back to the taxpayer. I knew when we did that, what would happen in year 3 of that conversation. Because year 1's one thing, year 2 is another. If we don't back it up with another levy that's in favor of the taxpayer, we're going to create a spike in year 3. So I think it's more appropriate that the Budget Committee starts looking 3 years out and aligning plans to long-range goals.
All right, any other questions? I don't see anybody moving. Go, Tammy.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
My name's Tammy Gluck, and my question is related to the capital reserve accounts that we have, which are part of the school district funds to put money aside for unexpected educational expenses and also unexpected maintenance facility-related concerns that come up. We had, several years ago, the middle school roof collapsed. I think that was the year we had all the snow that Mike was talking about. And then just recently, we had an issue at the Memorial School roof. So I guess my question is, on the Budget Committee, since you do set the budget, how do you think the district should plan for that? Should it be something that's built in within the budget? Should those, as part of a capital improvement plan? Do you think it should be warrant articles? So I'd like to know what your idea is and your philosophy on that to help maintain and keep our buildings in great shape for our students, to provide them with a safe learning environment.
Okay, again, being new to this whole process, I only got involved a month ago. I have a lot of learning to do, but I hope that my past experiences and also my open-mindedness about everything, I'm not biased to anything, will help me be objective and help develop sound plans and objectives for the future.
I'll piggyback on what I said prior as well. You know, my goal is to always have, look ahead to year 3. Without a fund balance to apply as a revenue, how can we go ahead and look at, fund balances help school districts. Fund balances help not only school districts, but the town and community as well to keep their finances steady, right? So from year to year without running the risks for those unforeseen events, as you mentioned earlier, the $200,000 roof collapsing, which is interesting because that building is no longer be our possession, but that's neither here nor there. So without a fund balance to apply as a revenue, the school board will have a difficult time explaining those peaks and valleys. I believe ultimately we have, I think, 5 fund balances right now. We have a special education, we have a couple capital reserves, and we have a technology. I'd like to see us go ahead and let the community know in 2 to 3 years in advance how much we need because it's aligned to a project for replacement. So it's ultimately aligned back to something I heard earlier. We have a 2017 plan that's out of date in the town side. Where's our strategic plan on the school board side? Where's our technology plan on the school board side? They're out of date. So I would like to align fund balancing as a reserve to go ahead and say if we can't afford it next year because we have a one-time expense that's not leaving, or we don't have enough room for one-time expenses, we have replacement funds in the reserve 3 years down the road. Does that make sense?
You good?
I just want to say that for the sake of people listening, as a 5-year member of the Budget Committee and as chair for 4 years, it is not the role of the Budget Committee to come up with long-term plans. Those are school board things, and it's the role of the Budget Committee to set a budget for a year based on the goals and the needs of the community on both sides, givers and takers. So some of these questions and answers are really pretty off topic.
So, no offense, that wasn't a question, so.
Yeah.
So we're here to ask questions.
It wasn't a question.
during Q&A.
I just felt that it needed to be some clarifying. I do have a question.
Would you like to rephrase it as a question? Would you like clarification on how I'm responding to some of these things?
Yeah, well, I asked the question, what do you see as the role of a Budget Committee member? I have a question. What do you foresee as your biggest contribution to the district by being on the Budget Committee if elected?
I'll answer your prior question, or your prior non-question with the question that you just asked. I believe the board, as you said, from year to year, they're looking at the expenses and looking at what what is being asked in this budget. I'm not a fan of looking at the budget as a one-year discussion because, quite frankly, there's long-term goals and long-range plans for purposes of the success and sustainability of the school system. So my goal and my expectation as a budget committee member would be to bring those best practices forward and go ahead and actually make sure that we're looking at it from a long-range perspective and not from a one-off perspective. Ultimately, if you want to go ahead and redo your yard, you have a long-range goal to redo your yard, but you're probably going to go ahead and piece it together over time. The same thing happens with the school district. Take, for example, 13 years ago, 2006, 2007, when the last class walked, for the first class walked into the new high school, what was a long-range plan for the rest of the campuses as we're opening a new campus and pulling out of campus? I would be asking those questions in the budget committee. How is this assuring success long-term for the taxpayer? Everything that's being asked.
Christine, did you have an answer?
Again.
You might have already answered it.
Again, being new to this, it's a learning process for me, but being retired, I have all the time the energy and the past work experiences to be a quick learner and jump right in and do what I can for the town.
All right. Is it a quick question? Hopefully a quick question. I don't want to monopolize all the time on one.
Good evening. My name is Mary Sear. I am a Kingston resident. I just want to clarify that.
Everybody good with a Kingston resident
Kingston resident.
asking a question?
But I do want to ask a question of potential candidates who would be representing all of us. All of us. My question is, do either of you know what RSA 32 is? And can you tell me how you interpret that as dictating what it is you hope to accomplish if you are elected?
I cannot respond to that. I don't know what it is.
Corey?
I don't know the exact verbiage behind RSA 32.
I just want to say RSA 32 is a municipal budget code, and it is the law which dictates what we do and can perform in our roles on a school budget committee or a municipal budget committee. We are defined a specific scope of what we are allowed to do, and that is to put forth a budget to the voters for the deliberative session, period.
All right, let's hear a round of applause for these guys. Thank them. All right, while we're on the Sanborn end of things, here's what we're going to do. We actually have 2 different slots for school board open this year, right? We have a Newton spot, and we have an at-large spot. So since there's 2 on each side, so there's 4 candidates altogether. One of them was not able to attend. I'll read a letter. The other 3 are here. What I'd like to do is invite them all up here at the same time, since a lot of the questions will be the same. They're just on a different side of the ballot. So if we could bring up here Jim Baker, Ursula Giannusa, and Tammy Mahoney. Come on up. Need another one? Need another one? Thank you. Let me start this off with the letter from the candidate who couldn't be here. Hello, my name is Dan Guide, and I am running for the Newton School Board seat. I am unable to attend candidates night as I have a prior engagement with the Boy Scouts Troop 18. A little bit about me. I grew up in Plastow and Atkinson. I moved here with my family 2 years ago when we bought my grandparents' home. My wife is a Sanborn alumni. I was also on the Timberlane School Board. I have taken numerous clinics and classes on school board governing. It will be easy for me to hit the ground running. In my spare time, I am a baseball coach, Cub Scout leader, Boy Scout leader, and I took part in raising over $30,000 for a new playground that I personally installed at the Pollard Elementary School in Plastow. We got to call this guy, make a note. My wife and I have kids currently enrolled in this school district, Memorial Middle and the high school, 1 more in 2 years. And I want to do my part to ensure that they have the same quality education that my wife was afforded. I am a firm believer in kids first. That being said, I still have a concern for rising taxes. Trying to balance both in this climate is not easy. The way New Hampshire funds schools is not changing anytime soon, so we have to adapt and think outside the box to move forward. I am a straight-up person. I have no hidden agendas or axes to grind. I am a fresh face to an old problem, balancing schools and their needs with the need of the stakeholders. For these reasons, I feel I would be a good fit to represent this town and its residents on the school board committee. I look forward to your support on March 10th at the polls. Thank you, Dan Guide. So Dan would be the challenger for the Newton seat, which Jim Baker currently holds. So Jim, do you want to go next with your 2-minute intro?
Hello, I'm Jim Baker. I'm running for re-election to the school board. My education is public schools and a college degree in business administration. I've been self-employed for 40 years. My business background is construction and real estate, development, and telecommunications. I've lived in Newton for 33 years. By 2015, my property taxes had become like an ever-increasing second mortgage that would never be paid off. I decided to find out what was driving this. It wasn't the town. Over 80% is the school district budget. Our cost per student is substantially higher than neighboring districts. So are our taxes. In 2015, I helped form the Newton-Kingston Taxpayers Association. We shared data, we presented at school board meetings, we held public events with state legislators, the State Board of Education, and the school district administration. It became clear that the push needed for improvement would have to come from voters organizing at the local level. 3 years ago, I was elected to the school board on 4 goals: stop the runaway tax increases, make decision-making transparent, improve academics, deal with neglected facilities, and since 2015, property taxes have remained almost level. If you look at your tax bill, if you go back to 2015 and you look at the taxes today, the mill rate has gone up 21 cents. On a $300,000 house, that's a $63 increase. And key student outcomes have improved. The committees I chair have played a major role in facilities planning and cost management. There remains much more to do. Plans to address deficiencies in math and English are in the works. Money to fund these is coming out of savings, not additional taxes. Our current board and administration is committed to continuing academic and fiscal improvements. So I'm running again, and I ask for your vote on March 10th. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. So we have 2 ladies here running for the at-large seat on the school board. So Ursula is the challenger, so do you want to go first?
Sure.
And then we'll go to Tammy?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ursula Gianusa, and I'm running for the member-at-large position for the school board. I'm a Kingston resident. I have a child currently in the 2nd grade at the Bakey Elementary School. I currently work as a U.S. Customs Compliance Specialist. I mainly do audits. I work with many different government agencies worldwide, ensuring that we follow laws and procedures. I have a degree in operations management with a concentration in logistics. Having a logistics background has expanded my skills and mindset to think beyond the current task at hand and to analyze how changes being implemented now will affect future processes. Prior to moving to Kingston, I served on the Board of Trustees for multiple terms until relocating to my current address. As a trustee, I oversaw bidding processes for projects, negotiations, and brought transparency to a board that was somewhat lacking at that time. I implemented a strategy with my board members that brought a divided group of people together to make a better community. My time served on the board expanded my skills in standard operating board procedures, which I would love the opportunity to utilize if elected. My reasons for running: I want students and education to be a top priority, while also balancing and promoting more transparency with the current administration. I feel I can bring another perspective, more of a fresh eye, and review processes and procedures. Keep in mind, I don't want to change everything. However, I feel there's always room for a little bit of improvement. I want to be clear that I don't want to raise taxes. I, too, am a community member. I have New Hampshire's gift of our renewal for our auto sitting on my desk right now. I don't know what paycheck that's coming out of, but I don't want to pay it. At work, we have a saying: see something, say something. If you disagree with events happening around, step up and take action. Well, I'm here and ready to serve. I've dedicated the last year to regularly attending school board meetings, meeting with staff, teachers, parents, community members, to get a sense of what the needs of each person is and how to achieve them, and again, get a healthy balance. I love our community. I could literally talk for hours about the reasons why I would love the opportunity to serve. But I only have 2 minutes. On March 10th, please consider voting me for the member-at-large position.
Thank you. Tammy, do you want to?
Yes, thank you. I'm Tammy Mahoney, and I've been your at-large representative to the school board for the past 3 years. My family and I have lived in Kingston for 20 years. I have a bachelor's degree in social work from Skidmore College, and I've been employed for the past 20 years as a systems analyst. I've enjoyed serving our communities in various capacities, including president of Sanborn Youth Soccer and Girl Scout troop leader. While my children attended Sanborn schools, I was actively involved as a volunteer with the PTA, drama club, music, and sports boosters. My reasons for running for the school board 3 years ago were a concern for our students and their futures, transparency and accountability, and balancing what the schools need against what we as taxpayers can afford. Since being elected, we've put a new administrative team in place that shares a deep concern for student success and improving outcomes. As chair of the Excellence in Student Achievement Committee, I helped formulate a definition of student success for our graduates. And we've set goals this year to find a new math curriculum and a new grade reporting system to help parents gauge students' progress. I've supported budgets based on need to curb overspending and restrain excessive growth. I've also supported returning unexpended funds to the taxpayers. As chair of the Public Relations Committee, I advocated for public forums while the board discussed some of the tough issues we've tackled. I also pushed for videotaping committee meetings for public viewing. I welcome feedback and I respond when constituents reach out. I've attended every board meeting for the past 3 years, and I hold myself accountable for the commitment I've made to represent you. We have more work to do. I have the experience and the capacity to rise above divisiveness, remain objective, and look at the issues in order to work toward solutions that will best help the children and the community. I'll continue to promote transparency and accountability and be a balanced but unrelenting voice for everyone I represent. Thank you for the opportunity to earn your continued support. I ask for your vote on March 10th.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for these folks? Lisa? So here's what we're going to do. You can ask the question, and then we're going to start with Tammy, go down, and then we won't have the same person answering the question the first time, every time.
Appreciate
Because
that,
that gives you enough time to think of the answer. So,
All right,
go ahead.
so this is a question for everyone. Last March, we had a warrant article put out by the school board to remove the word elementary from the articles. Many people in the communities feel that they were sold a bill of goods, that it was a hidden agenda that they were not informed about, and gave the board the ability to restructure and reorganize the schools. In hindsight, is there anything that any of you think could have been done differently to handle the situation, to make the community more in favor or with the board on this particular process?
Thank you, Lisa. That's a great question. I feel badly if the community didn't understand. I do feel that we did put out adequate information, that removing the word elementary was at some point down the line going to give us the ability to do some restructuring. The community was in that article passed with overwhelming support. And in speaking with the superintendent who had spoken with the teachers, it was felt that the teachers felt nervous about waiting. They knew that with that change, the restructuring was probably going to happen, and we didn't want to keep them waiting for a year or two, not knowing what was going to happen. So the decision was made to go right ahead, do the reconfiguration. It makes sense for the community, it makes sense for the students. I do feel badly. I can't think of anything that we would have done differently, honestly.
I went back and looked at the slides back in May when the superintendent of 2018, when the superintendent was presenting the results of the NASDAQ study. And in those slides, it refers to consolidating classes. In other words, he talked about 3 classes at Vakey and 2 classes at Memorial, and the advantages of having those classes all at one school. There were multiple hearings, but I understand that some people did not understand that removing elementary school meant a consolidation. And I think great efforts were made to explain that that was an option. I think that some people were surprised when that warrant passed. And when it did pass, like Tammy said, we looked at what the benefits were as a board. And if you think back, for people who are new possibly, there are capital improvement plans. And the capital improvement plan at the time that was passed in 2016, the year before I ran, had a $9 million proposed output for facilities. $4 million of that was going to be spent at the middle school. Even after that $4 million was spent, the classrooms would still be undersized, the gym would be the small little gym that it is, and the labs would be insufficient for what is really needed. So we looked at that, but also we looked at whether that was a realistic amount of money that needed to be spent. And a new analysis was done, and it was determined that it wasn't $4 million, and this is one of the issues that I have, is these overinflated estimates. It was more like 1 million to 1.8 million. But even so, should we spend $1.8 million or $1 million on a facility that isn't sufficient for the kids? And then should we continue the overhead of maintaining that school when our enrollments are dropping and we're wasting money on facilities that could be going into sorely needed academic improvements? So people met, people discussed, and clearly not everybody understood that removing the word elementary was going to mean the possible consolidation of the schools. But really, would you want your kids, if you look at our budget history, since 2001, over 50% of the operating budgets have failed. And it's not because Newton taxpayers aren't generous. Our cost per student is way higher than surrounding towns. It's because they haven't believed that the money was being spent wisely. And this is a perfect example of that. So we really we were up against the wall in terms of costs and needs. If you look at our academic scores compared to the state averages, they need help big time. So one of the things that happened over the course of the last few years is the conversation coming out of the school district is recognizing that academic scores and standardized tests and all this really matters, and we have to do something about it. And this consolidation was going to free up $500,000 to put towards academics. Putting the middle school and the high school was going to free up another $900,000. So that's $1.4 million that the school could use to improve academics and also return money to the taxpayers. If we'd waited another year or a year after that, that's another $1.4 million that's wasted on facilities. So when you look at the benefits to the kids and the community, it really had to be done. So that's my point of view.
Okay. So I obviously was not part of the vote, where I was not on the board. However, I do have my own opinions about the reconfiguration, having a child in the school district. What's done is done. I was not for it. I, like many people, didn't realize it was happening so soon. However, we need to make it work. And I know a lot of people think, well, we have to still fight this. I know a lot of people are still mentioning that. Our kids are really stressed out about this. I think mentioning, at the very beginning, mentioning that, removing that elementary word, it should have been said that the reconfiguration was going to happen within the next year. It was inevitable. It came very quickly. We did tour, I know everybody was part of the tours that came through. I was at the boosters table when the tours came through the Bakey School, and to see the kids' anxiety. I had one kid that came up to me with a notebook, and he was literally shaking, and I sat down with him and I said, what are your questions? And he had 25 questions, which was a lot more than I had, about how many classrooms were in there, how big was the playground, and they sound like very simple questions, but he was 8 years old, and I'm just thinking, wow, I can't imagine 8 years old having anxiety over a new school. So I think maybe it could have done a little differently, maybe been broken out in more stages. I agree that we didn't need to have the middle school. I mean, it was taking up resources. Maybe we could have moved the 7th and 8th grade to the high school and then waited a year and then transitioned elementary schools. Again, I wasn't behind a lot of the behind the scenes of that, so I don't know the inner workings, but I think there should have been a little more discussion with the community about how quickly things were going to progress. At the school board meetings that we went to, there were parents literally crying at the podium, just begging, not so much to say stop it, but just slow down and really take a look at the impact. So at those meetings, I didn't really hear a lot of people say that they were for it, if you go back and look at them, but that's all I got.
Jamie, you have a question?
Yeah, but you can't guess what it is. So, same basic question. Each of you get elected to the school board. What is the definition of your success? Your first year in the school board or your re-election year on the school board? What do you achieve in your first year? What do you define as your success? Thank you.
I think you're next.
Okay. Well, a couple of big things. One is the sale of the seminary building, assuming that the warrant passes to do that, and the warrant in Kingston for the tax deferral gets passed, and that deal goes through. I want to be a part of helping to manage that. We have, that property is being sold for $200,000 plus a lease for as long as we need it for $1 on the gym. So the terms of that lease have to be worked out. We need to be protected so that the lease on the gym puts an encumbrance on that gym property where nothing can happen with that gym as long as we renew that lease. There's no limits on the number of years that we have that lease for. So we get the rights of use with that without the cost of ownership. And nothing can be done with that property until we release the lease. I want to make sure the terms of the lease are sufficient to protect the schools. The other things that I want to do are finish the capital improvements plan. Again, we're starting from scratch because the old capital improvements plan was completely unrealistic. There was no funding aspect to it, $9 million. Is that all going to be raised in taxes? Impossible. So we're working on a new capital improvements plan. I also want to look at an audit of our software and internet access services. A couple of years ago when Roberto Miller was on the school board, he discovered something called Gizmos, which is a type of software we were paying $25,000 a year for, and nobody was using it. And that hasn't been looked at since 2016. So that's another area that we need to look at. We have to continue to fund up our capital improvements plans and our other reserves, but we have to do it in a balanced, measured way. Money's going to be coming in from savings. We have to implement interventions, again, in a balanced, clear-cut way. And probably the biggest thing on my mind about that is having clearly defined expectations for how those are going to help the kids, and measurements and benchmarks as we go along so that that money's not wasted, so that the kids are getting what they need, and we have ways to determine whether those plans are working, and if they're not working, we just don't ignore it. We fix it. So those are pretty much my areas.
Ursula?
Okay. If elected, my #1 goal is to get reconfiguration to be a success. And I know I was very verbal and against it, but again, I don't want our kids to fail. I want our kids to go to school. I want them to be proud that they graduated Sanborn. I want them to succeed, and I'm very nervous that that's not going to happen. I know the current administration is trying very hard to get that to work, but that would be my top priority.
Okay, so my top priority, always first on my list, is student achievement. So the district this year is looking at a couple different ways to boost that. Number one, really, on everybody's list is a new math curriculum, an improved plan for math instruction. So I guess after the first year of my next term, I would expect that we would have chosen a math curriculum to pilot and begin the process of implementing that new curriculum. The administration's goal, loosely stated, we haven't formalized it, but the administration is looking at a plan which would include offering Algebra 1 in 8th grade to all 8th graders. That's a really important goal, because really, if we want our children to do well in high school math and the SATs, et cetera, research shows that they really need Algebra 1 by 8th grade. So the math curriculum search will include that as a priority. Obviously, completing the reconfiguration, that is the board goal this year. The reconfiguration will be implemented in the fall. So to complete that would be certainly something that I would expect to have happen at the end of the first term. Obviously, the district is working very hard to make that successful. The other goal that we're currently working on is a new grade reporting system, because we've heard from pretty much everybody, parents and teachers, that this isn't the grading system, this is the reporting system, the report card, the system by which parents are able to access the information on how their student is doing. That is not working very well for anyone. It's time consuming for the teachers, there's too much information, it's clunky and cumbersome. So that is also in the works. The administration has already been working on a developer of a new grade reporting system, so that would be a goal as well by the end of my first term, to have that implemented and get some feedback from parents and make sure that it's working well for them.
All right, Tammy, I see you there, but I'm taking my moderator hat off for a minute, and I have a question. And
I know what your question is.
Right, little background to go with it. Do we have any military veterans here tonight? Raise your hand. There's one. Thank you for your service. So we had the idea in town to recognize our military vets with a Veterans Day breakfast, pancake breakfast. Needed a commercial kitchen really to do it. Best commercial kitchen in the town is in the school. Went to the school and we said, hey, can we use it on Veterans Day? They said, sure, for a fee. Okay? So they did say we could waive the whatever fee, right? Because they knew us, I guess. But they were going to charge us to pay the custodian. So obviously the custodian has to get paid, and it was $150, something like that. Excuse me. So we sent the check, but really? Okay. So we wrote a letter to the school board, and we said, hey, why don't you guys work with us on this? Why don't you come to the breakfast and hand out pancakes with us? Let's all be one town. Got a bill back from the school board. We also have a Memorial Day parade. Last couple of years, in this Memorial Day parade, we've had no band. And there was some coverage of this in the newspaper. So basically what we've been told by the school is the kids, their parents take them away for the weekend, which I don't fault anybody that long weekend you want to get away. But the parents won't commit their kids to play in the parade in Newton and Kingston. So what we have now is we have a very quiet parades, right, Mike? It's very quiet. We hear the motorcycles every now and then. We can't get the school to help us with this. We sent a letter to the school board. We said, hey, why don't you march in the parade with us? Why don't you be part of this? I think, did we ever get a response? I think once somebody said, I can't make it, sorry. So I guess what my question is, what are your ideas to work better with the town in these two specific instances? We have veterans here. We have a lot of veterans in the town. I'll be willing to bet they're all going to vote on March 10th. What are your ideas to fix these problems? Thank you.
Well, that was a loaded one for my first question.
Sorry, it was just the rotation.
Wow, okay. Yeah, thanks. I love the idea of volunteering. I'm on the boosters committee, and I drag my kid with me. We sell chocolates at the registration table, and we flip pancakes and serve pasta. And I think it's a great idea. I understand the custodians need to be paid. We also have the same issue when we're running our events, whether it's the Spooktacular in October or the Santa Breakfast. They're working, they also need to be paid. But I do like the idea of volunteering, and once I'm out of my broken foot boot, I would be happy to walk in a parade.
Over to Tammy.
Yeah, so my turn. Okay, so there's a couple. The questions that you asked are overarching. Those are exactly what you just asked. There obviously needs to be much better communication between the school board and the towns, especially Newton, because Newton has been more proactive, really, in requesting that. I did not get, we talked about this actually the other day, I haven't received any letters asking me personally to walk in the Memorial Day Parade. I would be happy to do that. I did that with the band, actually, when my son was in high school. I was a member of the Music Boosters in all 4 years, both parades, Newton and Kingston. We took our whole Memorial Day, and I marched along, with some of my compatriots here in the audience, with Waters, etc. So I agree it's important. It was always important to me. I raised that issue with the superintendent when the band did not march last year. So I guess I would say my answer really is that the school board and the town really, we do need to communicate better. I would suggest that we start earlier than budget season, because by the time you're into budget season in November, everybody's kind of focused on that. So the town of Newton had sent a request a couple years ago to the school board to meet prior to budget season, and I was in support of that. All of the Newton representatives, and plus myself, were in support of that. It just kind of didn't happen. But I would certainly favor pursuing that. I think we should start earlier. Maybe we should appoint one person. I would be happy to just be that point person as the at-large representative in communication with the selectmen. I feel like it kind of fell off the plate last time because there wasn't any one person who was kind of spearheading that on the school board side, at least. But I absolutely support communication. We share the same constituency. We share, resources. We ought to be communicating, and so that there aren't such hard feelings about issues like that.
Thank you. Jim?
I love a good parade. I wish I'd gotten the invite. I used to have an old convertible. We could have loaded up the old folks in it, including me. And how long is the parade?
2 miles.
2 miles. Done the 2 miles. I never saw that request.
Yeah,
I don't know who it was sent to, but it never got to the school board.
just so you know, I think, Diane, we sent it to the school board, to the chair.
Okay.
Yeah. We send everything to the chair.
Yeah.
So,
As far as the use of the cafeteria, I remember that, and we argued that the veterans should be able to use the cafeteria. There is a policy about using facilities, school board policy. There is a requirement that you pay for custodians. There are waivers for that you can ask for. So it could have happened, but it didn't.
Okay, thanks. Tammy, you had a question?
Doing good. So a couple of the questions that were posed tonight to all of you seem to have a category of public relations. And my question is kind of around public relations, too. There is a public relations committee on the school board. It's my understanding that there is allowed to be a Newton and Kingston community member involved with the Public Relations Committee, if my memory serves me correct. So if there is, one of you might serve on that committee, whether you're reelected or elected, maybe that is the venue to take these concerns to. My question, however, is somewhat related to that, but more around planning, and specifically strategic planning. And you mentioned, Mr. Baker, the outdated capital improvement plan. I'd like to know, however, what are your thoughts, all of your thoughts, about a strategic plan? How are we going to move that forward? And specifically relating to that, Fremont's contract with Sanborn. That contract expires, I believe, in 5 years. Should the Fremont District not be involved with our community anymore? That's a significant amount of revenue and a loss of the students and the relationships that our children have developed with those students in our high school through activities, sports teams, et cetera. So not only will it be a fiscal impact, it would be, I think, an impact with the dynamics of our school community. So I'd like to know how you would, how you can assure and work towards shoring up that contract for us when it expires, and your ideas on that.
I think Tammy goes first.
My turn?
I think it's my turn to go first.
You have more time now, Joe.
So the question of strategic planning was raised. That is on the horizon. The efforts and the energies the last couple years are being expended with the reconfiguration last year, planning, this year planning and executing. There's a new math curriculum, as I mentioned, that's being looked at, a new grade reporting system. Once the reconfiguration has sort of the dust has settled on the reconfiguration, the board will take up strategic planning. That is the administration's goal for us. The question of Fremont is a very good question, an excellent question, because I agree, Fremont is very important to our community, our culture. There are about 200 Fremont students, I believe, at the high school right now. It would be a shame to lose them. There are efforts, there are already talks underway. Fremont is doing their due diligence and reviewing other school districts that they might want to tuition out to. We have to be more competitive. We have to be more competitive on price. Our student achievement needs to be better, because that's one of the criteria that they're looking at. Those are the things I think that will attract Fremont back, get their interest back onto continuing to tuition into Sanborn. Their taxpayers, if you've ever been on the Fremont Facebook page, their taxpayers are very concerned. Their tax rate is quite high. So our efforts to keep the budget increases as low as possible, to be as fiscally responsible as possible, are very important in the effort to keep Fremont.
As far as the strategic plan goes, Tammy did a great job of telling you about that, and my thoughts on Fremont are that it comes down to two things: academic performance and our costs. Quite frankly, they're looking at Pinkerton as an option. If we lose Fremont, we lose 200 students. Their agreement with us is up after the bond is paid off, but they pay $4 million a year to us. So if they leave, that's about a $1.8 million hit to the district. It's a lot of money. There would also have to be reductions. the loss of 200 students, plus our own projections on enrollments are that we're going to drop 400 students in the next 8 to 10 years. If that happened and Fremont left, we'd be down to 1,000 students in the entire district. The high school was built for 1,056 students. So we really have to get our costs down. Pinkerton is about $4,800 a year less than Newton. I don't think we have to get down that low. There's no way we could. But we do need to make an effort to show that our costs per student are coming more in line with surrounding towns and other options. And the academics have to get better. Pinkerton has much higher ratings academically than we do. So there's a lot to get accomplished between now, as far as the Fremont question, between now and when they leave. But just for our own students in Newton and Kingston, there's a lot to get accomplished as well, and for our taxpayers. So there's, like I said, there's much more work to be done.
Oh, well, there's not much more to say. You both did a very good job explaining it. I agree that we need to work with Fremont. Losing 200 students could be detrimental, especially if the NASDAQ report is spot on about declining enrollments. Again, being newer to the board, I don't really have much more information on that, but it's something that I do think that we need to work with Fremont on.
All right, so follow up or?
I have another question.
Okay.
Oh, Tammy.
This will be the last one for the school board people, just so we can keep going.
So, all three of you were at the school board deliberative session. I saw you all there. There was a question from a Kingston resident about Article 10, which is the warrant article to put $25,000 into the capital reserve account for capital improvement and maintenance in our buildings. This article would cost nothing to taxpayers because it would come from the end of the year unexpended fund balance that's left over. I know that Mr. Baker sits on the Facilities Committee. He's the chair of that. There's a number of maintenance and building issues and costs that are associated with that. And there was a motion on the floor to increase that to $50,000. As a board member, in going forward next year, would you support initiating another $50,000, maybe more, to set aside this capital reserve money so we don't run into these issues of keeping our buildings safe, properly maintained, for our investments of our taxpayers and also for the safety of the children? And those funds aren't appropriate right now given the size of our budget. So I'd like to know your thinking on that and whether you support that, and if you don't, what other ways do you see keeping funds available for those catastrophes that happen, like roofs?
Well, one of the things I ran on was getting our facilities, our neglected facilities straightened out. And last year, we put a warrant up to add $75,000. Well, we have several reserve funds. The total of all the reserves is a little over $500,000. The capital reserve is about $147,000. The proposal you're talking about was originally $25,000 from the school board was asking for. A member of the public tried to raise it to $100,000. I was against that personally because I know we're doing a lot of asks here. The town budget, if everything passes, is going to be about 92 cents per thousand increase. If the school budget, if everything passes, it's going to be about 62 cents per increase. It's a lot of asks. So I'm in favor of capital improvement budgets. We need the money for the reasons that you said. You need reserve monies. Our budgeting process has been tightened up in the last couple of years. But there's always been money in there because health insurance and property insurance estimates have been high. When, at the end of the year, you have money left over because that money's not used. You always have money in the supplies budget that's left over. There's money here and there's money there. What the ideal would be is to have capital reserve budgets sufficient enough so you don't have to pad the budget. Because if you do have an emergency, there's money there to take care of it. And that way your tax rate doesn't spike when you have an emergency. That's the smart way to do it. So I'm in favor of that. The amount that you ask for is sensitive because we're asking for so much. Kingston's asking for a lot of money too. Newton needs a new fire truck. Kingston needs a new fire department. So you have to be sensitive with these numbers. And I was not in favor of the $100,000 increase. I'm fine with the $50,000 increase. That's my position.
Ursula?
All right. I agree a lot with what Jim said. I was at the deliberative, and increasing it to 100,000, like you said, there are a lot of asks. I was at the Kingston town deliberative, and there's 26 articles, I believe, and there are some that were just too much and some that weren't. I think 50 is reasonable. Having been a past insurance agent, I know anything can go wrong. Especially with all of the improvements with the reconfiguration. You tear down a wall, you don't know what you're gonna find behind it. So I think having a good balance is crucial. Again, we can't keep asking to raise taxes and keep going back out asking for more, but 50 I think is a very reasonable amount. Oh my God. You guys are burning me out.
The taxpayers will decide, they will tell us whether it's a reasonable amount or not. I hope that they do. The reason that we have asked for $25,000 on the warrant, the school board has asked for $25,000 in that warrant article last year and this year, is, as has already been stated, it's really a matter of establishing trust with the community. Trust that we are not asking for them to pay more than they feel that they can afford. We are trying to we're trying to build up this fund, we're trying to do it in a responsible way. We chose $25,000 because we thought that was an amount that the community would support, and they did last year. I hope they support $50,000. I truly do, because if they don't, then we will not be able to add anything into that fund if the warrant article fails. So it's a delicate balance. I am also very happy that it was reduced from $100,000, which was the original amendment that was offered, to the $50,000. If the voters approve $50,000 this year, then it will be a sign that that's okay, they can tolerate that, and yes, I would support that next year.
And I guess that was would you support it next year? So, Tammy answered that question.
Yeah, for sure. It's part of what I ran on.
So Lisa assures me she has a quick question that'll be quick answers. So go for it.
Quick answers. It is a quick question.
Yeah.
This goes with the Newton not feeling the love from the board.
Sorry, I
Since
don't have a
you all
poker face.
represent Newton, I know you're from Kingston, but you will be representing Newton as well as Kingston on the board. I am referring to the Swayze Gym situation where, yes, the seminary property is being sold to potentially, and the gym will go to the district under a non-lapsing lease for $1. However, if the district chooses to no longer take that lease, to drop the lease in the future, who benefits from that lease? Kingston, not Newton. What can the board do to make Newton feel like they're getting as much consideration as Kingston is when it comes to decisions that are being made.
I've lost track.
I think so, if I remember.
No,
Well, the biggest thing is the property's not in Newton. It's in Kingston. It's owned by the school district. It's owned by the school district. It was given to the school district by the trustees of the seminary. It's been maintained because the district uses it. The district will continue to control it with that lease for as long as we need it. But if you look at our enrollments and you look at the projections, at some point, the district is not going to need that building. And we have 3 gyms in the high school. It's just not going to need it. There is going to come a point, could be 20 years from now, when we're not going to need it. And at that point, the developer, there's going to become the developer is open to an offer from an athletic group, a local athletic group, or the town of Kingston to take over that property and continue to lease it. Some people want the school district to maintain responsibility for that, but if we don't need it, we don't want to pay for it. And so, the same with the seminary building. The district has a lot of money invested in the seminary building. We haven't used it since 2006. We get no benefit from that seminary building. But you have to realize that there's a lot of complications in this property. That seminary building is part of the historical designation. Nobody in Kingston has any appetite for tearing that building down. So you need a very special developer to take on that project. They have to be able to jump through all the federal hoops, the state hoops, and the local hoops to get the permits that they're going to need to do that deal. The fact that this guy's willing to tie that gym up, it's an encumbrance on that deal as part of the purchase price for as long as we need it, is a phenomenal situation. Very few developers would put themselves into that situation. So we've got it for as long as we need it. It's not costing us ownership costs. So Newton gets out of ownership costs. It gets out of ownership costs on the seminary building as well. And it's not in Newton. I mean, if it was in Newton and it was developed, down the road we'd get the tax benefits at some point. But when we're done with it, we're done with it. We get it off the books, we don't have to pay for it anymore. And that's the school district, to the benefit of the school district.
I think it's Ursula.
Well, first of all, that was not a quick question. Just gonna say that. Second, so I guess my point of view with the gym, I was at the school board meeting where Chinberg was answering Q&A, which he did a phenomenal job. He had no interest in the gym, and he almost made it sound as if it didn't even need to be part of the deal. So my question is, why, and again, I have no understandings of the dealings behind it, that was strictly negotiations with the board. Why could that gym not be part of the deal? And then down the road, even if it's 20 years from now, we own it, why can't we sell it then and then make back money? That's my thing. I don't understand why we have all this money invested in it. There's a new roof on it. It's obviously utilized to the max. People were leaving that meeting to go pick up their kids at basketball at that gym. It's used for many, and again, I don't know what happened with negotiations and whatnot, but if Chinberg doesn't really need it and the towns and school district need it right now, even for the next 20 years, that's a long time.
There's additional complications with that property. There's apparently, the historic building is on a 3-acre parcel for the description of the historic area. But the entire parcel is part of the application that was approved. And if you look at it, there's no there's no boundaries for that supposed theoretical 3 acres. So you'd have to subdivide that property.
Okay.
Also, there's a well, a community well, that feeds all that property that goes to the Nichols Library and other town areas. So you'd have to deal with that. There's no advantage to the school holding on to the property. Yes, if there's equity in it down the road, we give up that equity. But we give up the costs of owning it in the meantime, and we still get the use of it. So, to me, that's the benefit to the district, and that's the benefit to Newton.
Anything to add before we?
Well, Jim covered most of the points. I do agree with one of the points that I just wanted to highlight. That building doesn't have to go to Kingston. It doesn't have to automatically be absorbed by Kingston. Where the hope really would be that there would be a Friends of Swayze Gym or some athletic group or community group that was formed to take over the gym rather than necessarily having it be absorbed. I'm not sure Kingston is ready or in a position to, or necessarily willing or able to just absorb that property. So it would actually be a really good idea to start planning that now. The groups that are, it seems that basketball and soccer, I think, are some of the groups that use that gym quite a bit. So I would encourage that to start happening now, that some of those athletic groups start planning for down the road when that gym does become available and the school district does not really need it any longer.
Okay, let's thank these candidates. So the good news is we have our last group, and this is going to be for the Board of Selectmen. So we have 2 seats open on the Board of Selectmen. This is a pick 2 situation. We're going to have 4 candidates all together on the ballot on March 10th. So I'd like to get our candidates up here. We have Jim Doggett, Charlie Melvin, and Steve Sforza. Now, Larry Foote got in touch with us earlier tonight. He typically works Wednesday nights in the fire service. He took a vacation day just for this, but the way things work, somebody called out sick, so they called him in. So I have a statement to read for him, but he apologizes he couldn't make it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start, as we always do with the challengers, 2 minutes to introduce themselves. So why don't we go with Charlie first, if you want to introduce.
Okay. My name is Charles Melvin Sr. I'm a resident of Newton for 52 years. I've run a business in Newton for 51 years. I am right now your state representative. I am Justice of the Peace. I'm a notary public. I'm a Massachusetts real estate broker. I'm a New Hampshire real estate broker. I've spent probably 30 years on the planning board. I spent 15 years on the ZBA. I also was one of the first members of the activated master plan. And that's my qualifications.
All right, Steve, if you would introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name's Steve Sforza, George's Way. I'm here with my wife tonight and my 2 boys who are falling asleep. Thank you guys for being patient. I'm 48 years old. My current occupation is police sergeant. Education, I hold a Bachelor's of Science in Criminology and the Law with concentration in Public Policy from the University of Massachusetts. I also hold a Master of Arts, Criminal Justice, Security Studies, in Homeland Defense. Concentration is in Emergency Management. That's also from the University of Massachusetts. I have no local government experience whatsoever. I'm actually doing this of my own free will and accord, running for candidacy for the Select Board. Because I've been a resident of Newton now with my wife since 2009. I've taken an interest in town politics. I watch very closely all the board meetings, committee meetings, with a special interest in the school, obviously because I have 2 children at Memorial School. I care about the direction of the school district. Activities, affiliations, I'm a member of St. Mark's Masonic Lodge in Newburyport. I've been a Master Mason there for the past 25 years. During that time, I donated my time, efforts, and supported American Red Cross, the Shriners Children's Hospital in Boston, especially the burn unit. My father was burned severely 35 to 40 years ago. He spent a lot of time in the hospital. I also belong to several firearms and armors associations as a master firearms instructor, and also belong to the National Rifle Association as a law enforcement member. I'm also the sole member of my firearms training limited liability company that I started in 2013 for training purposes. I've been the Superior Police Union President for the New England Police Benevolent Association, Local 35, for over 6 years. Prior to that position, I was a Patrolmen's Police Union President for over 10 years. As an executive board member, I've negotiated many successful police bargaining union contracts over the past 2 decades and worked very closely with the town manager and the finance director for the municipality where I'm employed. During that time, I've developed a positive and excellent working relationship with town governmental officials while maintaining a robust working relationship with all union members to protect their union rights and benefits. I am currently the president of the Police Relief Association for my agency. Over the course of many years, the association has taken part in many worthwhile local events, have organized fundraisers to support numerous charities. The association also assists officers and their families during crisis and other family emergencies. To reiterate, I'm a resident of Newton, been here for over 10 years now. I want to bring a new, fresh perspective to the board. I believe that I can make a positive impact to town governance from my 27 plus years as a municipal police officer, my years as a military police officer. I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force, and also through my extensive schooling and training. My top priorities, and I'll get this out right now before any questions, I'm sure there'll be questions. Top priorities, if elected, if I'm so lucky, is to let our department heads run their respective agencies without any micromanaging from above. It is the duty of the select board to manage the affairs of the town, but that doesn't mean they should manage the day-to-day operations of our departments. We need to trust our department heads to run their agencies properly and responsibly as the professionals that they are. It's also our duty to give our town employees the proper tools and resources they need to do their jobs in a safe and professional manner, while providing them a competitive wage with increased benefits. We need to keep our taxes low while encouraging business growth. This means we need to be open to new businesses so we can attract companies to come here and make Newton their home, as we did. We need to ease the tax burden on all of our residents so that they want to stay in Newton and thrive here. And the only way to do this is to expand our tax base. Thank you.
Jim?
Good evening. I'm Jim Doggett. I'm running for re-election as one of your selectmen. And as many of the people in this room know, I've lived in Newton most of my life, and I've served on many of its boards and committees. Most of my life has been dedicated to public service to the town of Newton. I won't go through the itinerary of all the various committees in the years that I've spent serving the town of Newton, but in that time, I've been able to attend all the necessary meetings to be an effective selectman for you. I have spent the years working on budgets, writing policies and grants, attending relevant workshops and lectures, and dealing with personnel issues. I believe I bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to represent you fully. I've worked to improve communications and coordination between town departments, and I believe I have always treated the townspeople in an honest, fair, and open-minded manner. For me, Planning for Newton's future is a way to get a handle on taxes and growth. There needs to be a fair balance between development and maintaining the town's character. Newton is changing, and we must be ready to take on the challenge change brings. I believe I have that fairness and balance, and I ask for your support.
Thank you, Jim. So I'm going to read from Larry's letter. Good evening. My name is Lawrence Foote, and I reside at 59 Smith Corner Road with my wife, daughter, and mother-in-law. I have a daughter, son-in-law, and 2 grandchildren who also live in town. One of them attends Memorial Elementary. I have lived in Newton since 2002 and have been one of your selectmen for the past 7 years. I apologize for not being present tonight. I have a full-time job with the Lawrence Fire Department, and unfortunately, my relief tonight had a family emergency, so I could not leave. I very much look forward to serving you as a selectman for another 3 years if you allow me to do so. I would appreciate your support next month. For anyone that has questions for me this evening, I would love to hear from you. You can reach me at, everybody write this down, 978-804-0529, or email me at lfoote, F-O-O-T-E, at newtonnh.net. You can also view my bio on the Newton Community and Voting page. Again, I apologize for not being there. Have a good meeting. Sincerely, Larry Foote. So we will now open it up to questions. We'll do the same thing. We'll have the one question for everybody on the panel. We'll rotate. So Jamie Fitzpatrick, why not your question? You got to keep the streak going. So.
I got nothing. If you get elected, what would each of you define as your successful first year? What would you do that would be a success that you would try to achieve in your first year? Thanks.
Why don't we start with Charlie?
I say to keep Newton running smoothly. Keep us out of court and the lawsuits. Yep, that's it.
There's a lot to do. The top priority should be the sale of the old fire department. We need to make sure that gets turned into some sort of business/commercial property, so we can reap the benefits of those taxes, see if we can encourage more businesses to come here. I know the Puzzle Lane issue is probably a hot topic. I don't live right behind Puzzle Lane. I'm sure some of the residents over there don't want to see it developed, but I'd like to see a developer work in concert with the town and with those residents to come up with a solution to see if we can upgrade that area. I'd like to see the town employees earn more. I'd like to see more of our tax money go into the employees' salaries, increase their benefits. We lose a lot of good employees in this town, and because we're not competitive. I'm not saying we don't pay a good wage, but if you look at the contiguous agencies or the neighboring communities, we could do better. We could do better. We need to keep good people here. We need to encourage more people to come here, to work here, to live here. And that would be a major priority for me, is to take care of our employees.
At the end of the first year, I think that the most important thing is to produce a budget that gets passed so that we can address some of the concerns that the selectmen have been looking at for the past several years. The Board of Selectmen has continually, up until this year, tried to make sure that the budget balanced between the proposed budget and the default budget. We've always been within literally a few $1,000s of having them equal. There's a problem with that, and that is, in economics, it's called the death spiral. We have reached the point where our budget can no longer be the same level as the default because there are just too many things that we have put off. Things like, not necessarily so much pay increases, but certain maintenance items that are just, they have to eventually be done. And for me, a mark of having a successful next year is not only a continuation of the work that I and Selectman Gagne have been doing with the personnel policy and bringing all of the other policies up to date, but especially producing a budget that can be easily defended, though it's going to sting a little, because it's either going to be, reaching the point where we either have to increase the budget or reduce services. And if those are the only two options, it makes it very difficult.
Another question, Jim?
Jim Baker. So Newton really hasn't raised its budget in a lot of years. And yet costs go up. There's limited opportunities for development in Newton, Puzzle Lane being one of the major opportunities. Residential building adds to the tax base. But for every 4-bedroom or 3-bedroom house, if you get 1 kid or 2 kids, and I'm not against families, at $23,500 per kid on the school budget, you've got $47,000 every year per house gets added to the cost of the school. And maybe you get $8,000 to $10,000 a year paid as taxes. So that's not a way to grow your tax base. It's a negative impact on your tax base. So as selectmen, what do you see as the future of bringing more money into Newton? How would you go about it? What attractions can we develop here that will bring money into the town that is not going to cost more than what we're getting?
And can we start in the middle with Steve for this one?
Good question. I'm sure it's a major concern for every resident. We want to live in a small community, but we also don't want our tax rate to go up to over $30 per thousand. I mean, you can see it going that way. I see the residential improvements. I see more cul-de-sacs, more neighborhoods. And you're right, 1 to 2 kids per family, $23,500 per student. A lot of communities have this issue. The community I work in has that issue. However, they're growing their tax base by expanding businesses. They're encouraging it. They're offering some sort of breaks. They're increasing the infrastructure, bettering the roads, making it a more attractive community to come. I'm not saying the town of Newton should turn into Seabrook Route 1. I don't know if anyone's been driving up there lately, but there's a red light every 150 feet on Route 1 in Seabrook. We don't need that kind of business, but we need more businesses in town. And that's a tough one. But Puzzle Lane is right there for us. I think we should really look at that.
I think it's Jim next.
There are several things that we can do. Regretfully, some past decisions by Newtonians have created the problem that we now have. 25 years ago, the state of Massachusetts was looking to put an off-ramp on 495 onto Route 108. You can look at some of your older neighbors here who, Mr. Melvin probably remembers, there was a major hue and cry, and however, if the off-ramp had gone there, 108 would suddenly become,
Where was that?
Newton's version of 125 in Plastow. However, because it did not get on there, and I'd like to stop one of the rumors, I did not stop Amazon from coming to Newton. I did not stop Walmart from coming to Newton. Route 108 and the infrastructure that Newton has stopped those companies from even considering Newton. You have Route 108 that we think of as a nice highway. However, it basically goes nowhere. You can take it down into Haverhill, And provided you only want to go in one direction with a tractor-trailer truck, you're great. But Newton is the proverbial, as the Mainers say, you can't get there from here. We do not have 125 going through town. We do not have Route 1. We do not have that kind of an attraction. Couple that with the fact that Newton has no infrastructure. We have no public water. We have no public sewer. If we want to put in public sewer, it would cost us right around $18 million to put in the water treatment plant. And then everybody would have to pay their share of connecting to a public sewer system that actually, the 18 million will build the plant that doesn't pipe it through the streets. As far as water is concerned, every house in the town of Newton and every place that's in development has to supply their own water. We don't have that. So what we have is we do have a number of pieces of light industrial property in town that can be developed. However, they can only be developed within the strictures of our lack of public services. Puzzle Lane is over 100 acres. I believe it's 148 acres. There's a lot that could be done there. There was a master plan that was presented to the planning board for that called for the full subdivision. I actually suggested to the developer, bring that plan in, get it recorded, and then start working on it. Nothing has happened. The town is limited by those kind of responses.
Charlie?
Okay. We got to face the fact that Newton is a bedroom community. We have no access roads to large highways. We have one, other than Puzzle Lane, we have one industrial piece over in the junction that's not being utilized, which we probably should be utilizing. But the majority of the people in this community, when I was on the first master plan, they basically wanted to keep it a bedroom community. So it's kind of like stayed that way through the years. My feeling is that we need to develop more commercial property. Instead of getting houses, single-family homes in there that are costing us, we need businesses. And we just lost a nice strip right on 108, you know, where there's 7 houses going in, and that could have been really a nice commercial strip. But even still, if they put an exit off of 108 onto 495, Glasgow's going to get developed first. And we'll be 20 years down the road before we ever get developed. So really what we need to do is get the smaller businesses. Right now, the planning board seems to be working on home businesses. And home businesses, there's so many in this community. I mean, there's a machine shop over on Crane Crossing Road that's in a utility trailer. And we're not getting any taxes out of that. When I was on the planning board, every time we did a home-based business, I told that individual they could possibly be charged a portion of their property for commercial. Nothing's ever happened. No information got sent down to the tax collector. The tax assessor, the tax assessor. And that's something I would like to see. If you got a home-based business, then you should pay something. I mean, I have a half an acre. It is a commercial piece of property. I have my home there, I have my business there. And when I first moved here, my taxes were $250 a year. Now they're $11,500. And I talked to other people with their single-family homes, and they're paying $10,000 and $11,000. It just can't keep going this way. We've got to do something.
Another question, Tom?
When did you move here, in the 20s?
68. Jim moved here in 68.
67.
8. Ask your mother.
Tom Lackborg, Newton, New Hampshire. I know this is a hot topic, you know, the Puzzle Lane development, as everybody knows, it's actually Southern New Hampshire Industrial Park. I know we got some new faces here, and I like what I hear. So I'm going to ask the board, what is your view on the future expansion of the industrial park at Puzzle Lane, if you want to call it that? And how will you help improve communication between the developer and the board. Thank you.
I think we left off with Jim
Okay.
starting.
It's not so much communication between developer and the Board of Selectmen, it's developer and the board and the planning board. As I've already stated, and I've stated to the gentleman who just asked the question, I suggested that the master plan that was presented to the planning board be brought in for full approval. That divides it into 17 lots that can be commercially utilized. It shows roadway, it shows all the subdivision. Bring that in and start developing. That's what we recommend. Rather than doing it piecemeal, bring the whole plan in, get it approved. If you feel that you need variances, you can get variances for the entire lot, as opposed to getting a variance for this lot, getting a variance for the next lot. If you bring it in that way, then people would be able to see and say, yes, we support this or we don't. But if you have a plan, bring the plan in.
Charlie?
Well, I think the people of Newton are going to decide about whether they want to do this variance or not. I mean, this 50-foot setback requirement or not. We need that development. We need the tax revenue out of there. But we need to get it done. It's that simple.
I don't know what's holding it up. I'll just be honest with you, I have no idea.
That's fair.
But I know there are concerns with Walnut Farm residents. And I don't know the extent. I just, from talking with people in town recently, this is what I'm
Right.
hearing.
Just to make it fair, though, the Walnut Park sides will be completed by August. We will no longer be on that side, so it'll be done. And it's all approved and completed,
Good to
that
hear.
side. But then to answer back on Jim specifically about the Amazon thing, I sat at the table with them. You didn't, and I know the truth. So, don't even start with that. The reason that we haven't brought it in yet, because we have a warrant article, as you all know, that we need to make it a viable project, to make it a good project. I know it's Howard Lane, we have issues. It's 2 lots and a roadway. That's all we have there. We have about 7 to 8 lots on the Plastow line that we have some issues with, that we don't really know what's gonna happen there yet. The rest of the budding pieces are actually against our own property, because we have residential properties in there. That's what most of the setbacks are gonna go up and against, which is a future build-out in a different phase. So that's where we're at that point. Then again, I know it's a hot button thing, but I like what I hear, and I would appreciate an open conversation with everybody at some point when we get there, all right? Thank you.
Thanks. Any question?
This one really is quick. I'm wondering, as selectmen, you'll be serving as ex officio on some board or committee in the town, and I wonder what's your pick for each one of you?
You want to start with me?
Yeah, I think that's where we left off.
Okay.
so, yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, I'd like to go back onto the planning board.
Kind of what I was hearing from all three of you.
I'm wide open. Wide open.
I'm currently the liaison to the to the fire department, which I'd like to retain. I had to give up my ex officio position with the planning board after 14 years on the planning board, because I was asked if I would be the administrative assistant to the planning board.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Other questions? Lisa Gagner has a question.
Okay, I want to see how well you guys know what the job of a selectman is. What, if anything, do you think you can do as a selectman to assist in any commercial development? Not just one or the other, but any commercial, or any development in town. What can you do? What one thing can you do as a selectman to assist with development in town?
Well, I got to be honest with you, as a real estate broker in 1997, I had a piece of property listed down on 108, down by the post office, and I sent all my paperwork over to the Plasto Court, and I tried to get the Plasto Court to move to Newton. Right now, the Plasto Court is going to be closing in June 30th of this year, and our police department is going to be going to Brentwood because they can't keep it open. But they sent me back a letter and says, well, we can't come to Newton, we'd really like to stay in Plasto. So that kind of washed that one up. But eventually, I'll probably be listing that property again in the future, and if I do, it will definitely go commercial. Well, that's part of my expertise.
So
You can't, Lisa, you can't invent business to come to town when there's no place to put them, and when you've got a high tax base.
So Steve?
It's a good question. This might be a lengthy response, but I think it matters. I believe that we, as elected officials of the town, can do a better job communicating with other elected officials, town employees, and the public on a whole. We've seen it here tonight, the lack of communication between different boards. I've taken notice of many instances, whether on televised meetings or in person, where there's been a breakdown in communication with town officials. This leads to distrust, hurt feelings, misunderstandings. I'll give you an example. Deliberative session a few weeks back, there was a serious lack of communication and a breakdown between the various boards and committees. A concerned resident formed a group to research and develop a plan to upgrade and refurbish Greenie Park. That resident, in my opinion, went above and beyond putting together this plan, ultimately brought a warrant article to the session. This in and of itself is commendable and quite brave on her part to approach, submit her arguments to the board for their support and to make the presentation to the town. If you support the idea of raising funds for the Greenie Park, it's your opinion. If you're going to, approve it or not, if you're going to side with her or not in that group. But the board failed to assist this resident in her group in giving them the appropriate level of information as it pertains to funding. This is what I found to be the complete lack of communication, or the effective communication. It was learned at the deliberative session, while the resident was arguing for her article, that there were unused funds in the Parks and Recreation account. Apparently something that neither party was aware of, or anyone on the board was aware of, or didn't even think it was important to bring up at that point in time. This is a substantial amount of money sitting in an account that could have been used for Greenie Park, and it wasn't. If the elected officials are communicating in a more effective manner, that could have been discussed prior to that session and worked out into that warrant article, lessening the tax impact being applied for on that warrant article. This is information, if known beforehand, could have been useful to the residents involved in that Greenie Park project. And why did it take so long for this information to come out? It came out that night at the deliberative session. It may have just been an oversight or a misunderstanding or miscommunication, but this confirms my belief and strengthens my belief that communication is lacking in this town, as well as with the Sanborn Regional District. Again, another example tonight. I could go into 2 or 3 more examples that I have written down here. I won't bore you. But the communication needs to be improved. This goes in line with some of what she asked. How do we bring businesses to town? We as police officers nowadays are trained to de-escalate situations using effective communication skills. We've undergone hours and hours of training, seminars, classroom exercises. We call it verbal judo in our profession. and we use a specific model. Number one is to listen. Number two is to explain with dignity and equity. In essence, just be fair. Treat everyone with respect. And don't humiliate the person. And with regards to communication, most all miscommunications, misunderstandings, hurt feelings, general mistrust can all be traced back to the lack of effective communication. And if elected, I think I could bring a positive impact to the board and hopefully impart some of my knowledge and training to other members so we can all have a better dialogue to move forward. I don't plan on going anywhere as long as my wife will keep me. We bought a house in town, like I said, over 10 years ago. We're trying to raise our family here. We don't want to go anywhere. I'd like to keep my kids in the district, even though my wife wants them to go to Catholic school. We can't afford that on a civil servant salary, but I think we can do better to bring the tax base, the tax burden to our residents down by encouraging more communication, better communication with all of the boards. That includes the planning board, which is a big part of this town, obviously, to encourage, to do better. That's my response.
Jim?
When it comes to increasing commercial and attracting commercial growth, how many people in the audience know about the village district zones that are in town? A couple of people. The town adopted through a charrette a few years ago areas in town that are specifically highlighted as mixed-use areas so that people could have residential property as well as commercial on the same parcel. We instituted it, but it's the proverbial, we built it and they didn't come. The town selectmen have absolutely no power to do much in the way of advertising. As a matter of fact, we're enjoined by certain state statutes to prevent us. At the same time, we have the ability to set up what is called an Economic Development Council. And we had one for years. People will remember names like John Martin. They were on that. However, we do not have the ability to give incentives to attract business to town. Because the minute you give an incentive, somebody else in town is going to have to pay for that. So we have to be very careful. I believe that the planning board has worked very diligently with anybody that has come in, and that is the appropriate way for it to be done. The planning board is autonomous from the Board of Selectmen, and they're responsible for making sure that a certain part of the law is taken care of. The Board of Selectmen is your enforcement agency for when something isn't going right. But we are actually, we do not have the power to go out and be cheerleaders. We do not have that ability. And no one member of the Board of Selectmen can do anything at all. It has to be a concerted effort. We have worked, and I look around, I see several different selectmen that are in the room that know that the Board of Selectmen has, in the past, done what we could to help improve things and move things along. However, the selectmen themselves are highly limited. That would be a good question to have asked the planning board people, because they're the people that do the master plan and will work on the future.
Any other questions? All right, so here's the thing. We've heard from a lot of candidates tonight and appreciate everybody's questions. Most important thing is everybody we heard from tonight, including those folks who are up here right now, deserve our thanks, because frankly, it's very easy to complain about things on social media or to your neighbor. It's much harder to step up, put your name in the hat, to try to run for one of these offices. You end up giving up personal time, family time, work time, whatever. So let's have a round of applause for all the candidates. So March 10th in this room, 8 to 8 is when we're going to vote. There probably will be a blizzard, because there always is. So be ready. Thank you.